In this video, I am ranking every scene in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull from worst to best. I've already done this insanity for Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Temple of Doom, and the Last Crusade. If you want to check out those videos, go to my channel homepage, or you can click one of these video cards that should be popping up right about now. But for now, let's get started on the rankings for Crystal Skull. Starting off at number 25, it's the worst of the worst. It's a jungle truck chase sequence. This scene is the central action set piece of Crystal Skull, and it sucks. It is terrible. There's just so much CGI. Nothing looks realistic. The lighting is so harsh and oversaturated, and there's no sense of danger to any of this because every single little action moment feels like it defies laws of physics left and right. It's just an eyesore, the entire scene, and it's too bad because there's a lot of practical effects going on here, like a lot of stunt work that's just hidden by all the bull crap. So this is a clear last place. It's probably the worst scene in the entire series. At number 24, we have the scene with the aliens, or should I say the interdimensional beings. So this scene continues on from the last one with the atrocious CGI and just the lack of restraint with everything. But for me, it is way less embarrassing than the jungle scene. It's still terrible, like Mac's death where he's played off like a hero. That sucks. The alien mean-mugging Irina Spalko, dumb as hell. And again, there's no sense of danger when Indy, Mutt, and everyone escapes because there's just CGI garbage everywhere. At number 23, we have the first scene in the movie. It's when the Russian soldiers are racing the fun-loving American youths. And this scene is this low because of the CGI gophers. It's how the movie opens up, puts a bad taste in my mouth, probably everyone's mouth, and it really undermines what's a pretty solid opening scene with them actually racing. So pretty terrible for that one reason. At number 22, we've got the waterfall scene. And I feel like this scene could have worked if it wasn't immediately after both the jungle chase sequence and then right before all the alien shenanigans. Because this movie's biggest problem is its CGI and its lack of restraint. And this scene has no restraint. I mean, 3 waterfalls is ridiculous. It gets stupider and stupider and stupider each waterfall. So it just sort of continues the train wreck that the second half of this movie is. Plus, I really hate that Marion has this idea and the movie plays it off like, oh, look at Marion. Look how creative she is. Look at that self-satisfied smile on her face. She is amazing. No, she is an idiot in this scene. At number 21, we have the map scene where Indy and Mutt fly to Peru. This is the shortest scene in the movie, but it doesn't make me cringe like the scenes that I've already talked about. And it's got a couple of fun callbacks to earlier Indiana Jones movies. So this placement feels about right. At number 20, we have Indy and his cohort exploring the temple that is manned by Nesca Indians. I think that's what they're called. It's hard for me to remember because this entire scene is a massive exposition dump with Indy just basically talking through his thought process for 10 straight minutes. There are a couple of good set pieces during this sequence, but overall it's just a big drag. At number 19, we have Indy and Mutt battling it out with whatever the hell these guys are in the cemetery. And this is not a bad scene. It's quite enjoyable and it's well directed. It's a solid action scene. But what is the point of this scene? Does it end up mattering at all? I guess it sets up these guys for later, but that doesn't seem worth the effort. It does have a very iconic line for Indy, though.
You're a teacher?
Part-time.
At number 18, we have the ant scene, and this is a pretty fun scene. And these ants are freaky as hell when they eat that Russian alive. And Indiana Jones has an amazing fist fight. Harrison Ford at age 66. This is pretty crazy that we get this kind of physical performance from him. But the scene is kind of undermined by all the CGI. I mean, they wouldn't have been able to do this without CGI, but show a little restraint, man. Why do the ants have to be climbing on a stepladder to get to Irina Spalko? Just cut that part out entirely. It's just a dumb, pointless thing that just makes the scene go from kind of terrifying to incredibly campy. At number 17, we have Indy teaching at Marshall College and getting fired. And this scene would have been higher. It's got a good start to a character arc for Indiana Jones and some fine Harrison Ford acting. But this plot just sort of dies out and solves itself in the end, so it's kind of irrelevant. At Number 16, we have Indy and Mutt exploring Oxley's prison or asylum or whatever. And it suffers a little bit from the same stuff that temple scene suffered from. There's a lot of lore here, a lot of Indy just figuring out clues quicker than the audience can actually process them. But it is fun to watch Indiana Jones do Indiana Jones things, so that's probably a good thing. The scene does suffer though because we just met Mutt, and I like Mutt as a character, but we have not met Oxley, and Mutt crying over Oxley having gone insane. Why does this matter to me? At number 15, we've got the infamous nuke the fridge scene, and hear me out, I like this scene. I genuinely enjoy it. It's got horrible CGI, it's terribly unrealistic, it kind of meets all the criteria for a shitty sequence, but I feel like the shittiness is like sort of restricted to the tail end of the scene, including the gopher's return. But like the lead up to Indy having to get into that fridge is classic Indiana Jones in my opinion. His frantic energy trying to get out of a crazy situation makes the scene work way better than it should, but I actually would have had it higher if it actually mattered to the plot of the movie. Like, this literally feels like Indiana Jones on a side quest. At number 14, we have Indy under suspicion by US intelligence, and just like the Marshall College scene, this is part of a sort of character arc that just gets dropped, so it ends up being more irrelevant than it should be, so it could have been higher, but it's not. This scene is a little bit more important than that scene, though, because it also gives you more exposition about Irina Spalko, and there's some good Indy character moments here. At number 13, we have Indy and Mutt deciphering Oxley's clues at Indy's house, and this scene has some of the same issues with the lore I've been mentioning before, just how Indy solves things really quick and it just sort of is like information overload. But I really like how into this Indiana Jones is. It really shows you how good Harrison Ford is at playing this character. At number 12, we have Indy being held in the Russian camp. This scene has a very big problem. It's Mac. Mac is a terrible character. I don't care about his backstory because it's so flimsy. I like all the lore we get about the Crystal Skull here. It's not overly dense, and I think there's a good back and forth between Indy and Spalko. And I think this was a decent way of introducing aliens without it being overly cheesy. At number 11, we have Indy and Charlie ruminating at Indy's home. And Charlie's not much of a character, but he has a very important line because he pretty much states outright the theme of the movie.
Seem to have reached the age where life stops giving us things and starts taking them away.
And there's some good emotion here, you know, some fond callbacks to Henry Sr. and Marcus Brody. Though I always find it funny that it looks like Indiana Jones just has a picture of Sean Connery on his desk. At number 10, we have Mutt's introduction. And a lot of people don't like Mutt. I actually like this character. This scene is really cheesy, but it's Indiana Jones cheesy. Like, it's good cheesy. There's plenty of cheesy scenes in the original trilogy. This fits right in with those. So I think it's a fun, quirky entry for a solid side character. At number 9, we have Indiana Jones's first scene in 19 years. What a fantastic re-entrance for an iconic character. It's an iconic image. And it's actually something that I think The Last Crusade was lacking, just these iconic images of Indy. And I think Crystal Skull nails it right from the start. I do think, though, that there's a little bit too much Spalko, like Spalko expositioning. Like, I just want to focus on Indy's reintroduction. I don't really need all of Cate Blanchett's hamming it up, so that brings it down to 10. At number 8, we have Indy and Marion getting meated. Getting meated. That's not what they did. They got married. Okay, let's try that again. At number 8, we have Indy and Marion getting married, and there's a lot of cheesy stuff in the scene, like Mutt about to put on Indy's hat and Indy grabbing it from him. Pure cheese. But man, it's so delightful. What a great, satisfying ending for Indy's character arc that Dial of Destiny proceeds to kinda just throw under the bus. Like, this just makes me feel good, even if Indy and Marion's relationship was not really earned by anything that they did during the movie. Still, super satisfying, and that's why it's up at number 8. I still don't know why I said they got meated. That's not even a thing. At number 7, we have Indy, Marion, and Mutt arguing in the truck. And this is just a really fun argument. It's got the right mix of like serious drama with Indiana Jones style humor. And it ends with one hell of a line.
But they all had the same problem. They weren't you, honey.
I think Marion is pretty bad in this movie after the scene, but here, this is a very earnest character moment, so I love it. At number 6, we have Indy and Mutt walking through Nesca, Peru, and this is a very simple scene. It's just the camera's in front of Harrison Ford and Shia LaBeouf, and they're just walking towards it for the most part. But sometimes these simpler scenes are just really effective, and this one we get a lot of good exposition and character development, and I think Indy looks his most iconic in the movie in this scene. Number 5, we have Indy and Mutt exploring Oriano's cradle, and first things first, this scene should have been cut by like 2 or 3 minutes. It goes a little bit too long. But overall, I like that sense of adventure with the scene, like that sense of discovery. It's something that all the Indiana Jones movies do, and this is where it really felt like we're in an Indiana Jones movie. And we get more lore about the Crystal Skull. We get Indy sort of trying to get through all these little contraptions, not really traps, but just figuring stuff out. And it's just a good atmospheric scene with some solid humor. At number 4, we have the diner scene, and this is another one of those good Indiana Jones exposition scenes, though it's a bit overly dense like the lore often gets in Crystal Skull. But Spielberg makes the scene visually interesting despite not much actually happening until the end. And I do love the dialogue between Mutt and Indy.
We're a lot of Marys, kid.
Shut up. That's my mother you're talking about.
You don't have to get sore all the time just to prove how tough you are. Sit down.
And it ends with that great quick brawl between the greasers and the jocks. This is classic Spielberg, and I think the movie really taps into the time period, and it's, again, cheesy like a lot of scenes I mentioned earlier, but good Indiana Jones cheesy. At number 3, we have the warehouse scene, and this should have been higher, but it's got a couple of negative elements. Mac's betrayal does not work for me at all because we've known Mac for like 2 minutes, so I don't give a shit. And the Gophers at the end, terrible. Again, I barely know them, so I don't give a shit. And then I don't like that John Williams actually uses his score from Raiders of the Lost Ark here. Like, I came into this movie wanting like this brand new score from John Williams, which we do get, but I feel like this scene feels trapped in the specter of Raiders of the Lost Ark. But other than that, fantastic direction, some great set pieces, just incredible visual storytelling. Love the magnet bit, and Indy's escapes throughout the scene, fantastic. A really fun action scene, just let down by a couple of nagging little things. At number 2, we have the motorcycle chase through Marshall College, and in my opinion, this is the most creative action scene in the series after the Temple of Doom. Them riding through the college by itself visually looks spectacular. There's a parade they have to get through. The whole thing where Indy gets pulled into the Russian car and then has to get back out onto the motorcycle, that's just pure Spielberg spectacle. And even the gag at the end where they're sliding through the library, it's fantastically directed, and it has that goofy Indiana Jones humor. The reason this is not my favorite scene in the movie, though, this is a shorter Indiana Jones action scene, like by quite a bit. It's just under 3 minutes. And also, I don't like the gag with Marcus Brody's statue. I didn't like how Marcus Brody's character was handled in Last Crusade, and I feel like this joke is disrespectful to the character, so number 2. And at number 1, we have Indy and Marion reuniting. This scene is very close to being overly schmaltzy and campy and dumb, but it toes that line just enough that I love it. I love the callback to Raiders, even if I complained about this earlier in the video.
Indiana Jones.
I like the back and forth between Indy and Marion as Indy learns he's a father. Even though Karen Allen is rusty, the dynamic is still there. And I like how a prior joke between Indy and Mutt pays off hilariously during the quicksand bit.
You quit school?
Oh, you got a problem with that?
Not if that's what you love doing. Don't let anybody tell you different.
But,
Not everybody.
he's your son.
My son?
Why the hell didn't you make him finish school?
And then the snake gag. This is so cheesy, so dumb. It looks stupid, it's unrealistic. Whatever. It's hilarious. This is a callback to Indy's fear of snakes, something we hadn't seen enough of since Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I love seeing Indiana Jones being the funniest character in a scene. He's been funny prior to this in the series, but usually he's reacting to other characters. Here, he is the comedy.
I'm calling it that!
It's a snake. What do you want me to call it?
Hey, rope!
What?
He grabbed the rope!
And this scene is a big reason why, despite all of Crystal Skull's flaws, I could never hate or even dislike this movie. So there you have it, my rankings of every scene in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. I have plenty of Indiana Jones videos on my channel. If I were to rank my videos from worst to best, this would be the worst one. That is just me trying to encourage you to watch more of my stuff. Obviously, if you got this far, I assume you enjoyed this somewhat.